The rule of Benedict encourages the abbot or prioress to appoint assistants who will carry out respectfully what the superior judges best for the whole operation of the monastery and its members. Today, I have the privilege to appoint a new director for our Oblate community, along with coordinators of communication and formation. I asked Stephanie Smith to come forward. Stephanie, are you willing to serve as Director of Oblates in a spirit of openness, obedience, and collaboration?
I am.
Stephanie, will you then accept the sacred ministry of Director of our Oblate community?
With God's grace and guidance and the support of our Oblate community, I accept the responsibility of this ministry.
I now ask Shirley France and Lynn Belli to come forward. Shirley and Lynn, are you willing to serve as coordinator of formation and coordinator of communications for our Oblate community?
I am.
I am.
Thank you.
May God bless you with wisdom, courage, generosity, and faith. And may God bless all of us, protect us from all evil, and lead us all together to everlasting life. Amen. So we truly thank these three for accepting this responsibility and look forward to working with you as you move forward.
So we're going to launch right into the PowerPoint presentation that Shirley and I have put together for this. But I do want to let you know at some point in the presentation, we're going to do workshops. And one thing you will find as Shirley takes over as formation director, you're going to get homework. Just forewarning you. But up here at the table are copies. These are things that were used or were presented at the Congress. So this was the workshop that was created, or the workbook that was created for all the workshops. And then we have the liturgy guide that was given to all of the oblates. You want to hold that up, Shirley? The liturgy guide, a pen, the workshop, the water bottle was all contained in that bag when you registered. So you had all of that. Hide the candy, Shirley, hide the candies. The candy's a surprise. So there's some candy. You're going to get candy later. Pretend you don't know. And then there also were some other things that happened during the Congress. And when we get to that in the presentation, we'll show you the pieces that went along with that. So I'm going to start at this point. We'll let Shirley take over and start the presentation about the Congress itself and give you a sample of what the participants did when they were there.
Thank you, Stephanie. So we were privileged to represent our community at the 5th World Congress of Benedictine Oblates. And we want to thank all of you for your prayers and your support. And we were very honored to be in that role. It was, as we said earlier, in September, and it was in San Anselmo in Rome. So we want to also, as Mel said, we want to welcome all of our Zoom participants because we're so excited that so many people have decided to join us today, because we're just thrilled to share with you what we have to share. We wanted to let the Zoom participants know that when we go into breakout, we're going to have them into chat rooms of 3 people. And Sister Jill has this all worked out, so this is going to be awesome. So in just a moment, we're going to have the Zoom participants break out into chat rooms, and you're going to ask each other, groups of 3, as we will hear in just a moment as well, what makes you laugh out loud? This is an effort to get to know one another. What makes you laugh out loud? If you could go anywhere, where would that be and why? And what brings you peace and why? So the 5th World Oblate Congress, our theme was moving forward, living the wisdom of the rule. And I wanted to share that our logo, which is on the corner of every slide, and it looks like this, was created by Brother Martin over at St. Meinrad Arch Abbey, who is an amazing artist. And he did this for us. He did our 4th Congress logo as well. And as you can see, it's like we Oblates, and it's called Moving Forward, Living the Wisdom of the Rule. Our group was divided into task force teams, and there were a core group, which were our leaders, and then we had task forces. Some of the task forces included fundraising, liturgy, and one of them, formation, which Janice Stopp actually led, and ours was workshops task force. And keep in mind, we have never done any of this before, and they had never had any of this before at Congress, even though this was our 5th one. So our workshop focus was formation. In fact, the entire Congress focus was formation. And this was our job, to develop and produce materials, prepare facilitation teams to be ready with 5 different languages, and prepare logistical aspects for 8 classrooms, 4 in English, 1 French, 1 German, 1 Spanish, and 1 Italian. The materials we created were pre-work, workshop workbooks, facilitation guides, 7 Oblate novice formation models, 4 pillars of formation, and the survey that would be given after every single workshop, and also an overall Congress survey. So the pre-work, some of you might remember, we actually did it here, where we sent out, for those who registered, some questions, and they were supposed to go back to their Oblate community and give responses to those questions. When they came to Congress, then they wrote the responses from their monastery in their workbook, and that was part of the discussion for one of the workbooks. Workshop titles and focus. So workshop 1, workshop 2, and workshop 3. Workshop 1, and each of these were 90 minutes, by the way. So please know that the activities we are going to do today are the Reader's Digest version, because we certainly do not have 90 minutes for every one of our activities. So workshop 1, the title was Exploring Oblate Formation Needs for the Future. And how we did that was 2 specific tools, which we're going to talk about today: 4 pillars of formation and 7 models of novice formation. In workshop 2, our title was Living Out Our Oblate Calling in the 21st Century. We spoke about the importance of evangelizing our Oblate charism, and especially to young people, to draw young people to our Oblate communities. Workshop number 3, expanding the mission of the monasteries we serve. We are just an outreach of our own monasteries, and we want to make sure we're supporting that mission. So how may we better support our monasteries, and how may we expect the Benedictine charism expand the charism around the world? So it's really important. We had a very engaged group of people in our workshops. It was very robust. We got lots of feedback that even 90 minutes was just too short. So today we're going to focus on the next slide, which is workshop 1, which primarily dealt with the 2 key pieces that we're going to be doing activities around today. And the first of those, if you would look at the handout you have on your table there, these are the 4 pillars of formation: human, communal, intellectual, and spiritual. And I wanted to let you know where these came from. These were actually 4 pillars of priestly formation that were first developed by Pope John Paul II for priests. But the rector has, Janice asked for support of the rector to actually translate these to what would they mean for an oblate formation. And what we do know, we all know this, every single Benedictine monastery is autonomous. So we don't have any one person or one leadership group that tells every monastery what to do or how to do it. And that's pretty awesome, because we have all that autonomy to do many, many wonderful things. This became very foundational to the group in Rome. So I'd like to talk to you just a little bit about that. So if we look at these for a minute, the human pillar, developing virtues of honesty, integrity, transparency, and accountability. So an example might be, I'm making this up, might be that when we do something that we know is wrong, we immediately take responsibility for it. We own it. That would be the accountability piece of the human pillar. Next, the communal pillar, practicing and developing a growing awareness of charity, hospitality, and the needs of others. This may be how we serve. This might be a service thing for us. You know, hospitality doesn't always mean that someone comes and sleeps at our house and we feed them. It could mean the hospitality of allowing someone to be heard. Maybe we talk to them on the phone. Maybe it's someone who's lonely. There's lots of ways we can do the communal pillar. Next is the intellectual pillar, preparing for a deeper understanding and appreciation for monastic history, including the theological and philosophical elements. This could mean, what's our study? You know, I loved it when Sister Rebecca really gave us our talk about the archives. Wow, that was powerful. And I feel like we got this much. We have a lot of opportunity to learn about our Benedictine charism, but also how we got up to the Benedictine charism. And there's lots of pieces we have an opportunity to learn. So that's our study. That's our intellectual pillar. And next is the spiritual pillar, experiencing with the other pillars a lifelong process of growth in holiness, strengthened through prayer, liturgy of the hours, Lectio Divina, and spiritual direction. And so when we talk about the spiritual pillar, it's not about doing one of these things one time. It's about developing a habit of the spiritual pillar, and it can change over time. But being rooted in our day-to-day by the spiritual pillar, whether it's studying the Psalms or contemplative prayer, anytime that we feel led to a particular practice that'll grow us in this pillar. So we're going to do an activity now. If we could turn to the next slide, please. So here's what we're going to ask you to do, and we're going to ask even our Zoom participants to do this in their chat rooms. Beneath each pillar at your table, identify one or two specific behaviors that you're interested to initiate to move forward in your continued formation, and briefly share these with your group. You can pick one pillar, you can pick all four of them, and you're going to have 15 minutes for this activity. And please write your responses on your worksheet. Questions about this activity? Okay, I think we're good. You've got 15 minutes. Thank you. All right, 7 models of formation. And we sent the files out, and you're thinking, what in the world are those two ladies doing? So 7 models of formation were when we were getting ready for Congress and to have the workshops. We recognized very clearly that every monastery, as I said before, is autonomous. So the method of formation for oblates is different for every single monastery. And so Jana Stopp had the idea to reach out to oblates from different countries around the world and ask them to share what their oblates do for formation. And so we sent a template, and they sent us 30 pages that we had to edit and into our template. And I want to walk through with you briefly what these are and then what's on a model. And then we're going to do an activity around these models. So first model, interactive model, and we sent out the files for our Zoom participants. An interactive model is a model of oblate formation where you have a partner, where you have someone that you communicate with, walk through the rule with. You know, in our case, we have the wisdom distilled for the daily, right, from our monastery. So it's when you work with a partner, you have a companion on your journey, interactive, 2 people or more. The next, and that interactive model actually came from our model that we're going to share in a moment, came from St. Meinrad Archabbey. So that came from their abbey. The next model is the contemplative model. And as you can imagine, that oblate formation was about prayer, right? The contemplative model actually came from England. Some people from our international team from England. They root their oblation in different forms of prayer, whether private or communal. The next model of formation, houses in process of completion. And you're wondering, what in the world is that? The original name for that was monasteries that are closing. And when I met with Sister Anita Louise and spoke with her about what we were planning, she goes, oh, no, you mustn't ever call that monasteries that are closing. It's called houses in process of completion. They maybe served their time for a specific reason, and now they are closing for lots of different reasons. Could be resources, could be some of our monastic brothers and sisters are elderly and maybe there weren't enough to maintain the monastery, or geographically it wasn't feasible for people to come to the monastery anymore. houses in process of completion. And actually that model came from Czech Republic, from a group that are oblates at a monastery that is in the process of completion. So they're very excited to share what they're doing. And there are numerous ones across the world, by the way, that are in process of completion. Next is the extended model. The extended model came from South Korea. And to become a Benedictine oblate in South Korea, it takes 6 years or more. And they have a very robust oblate community. I watched live stream one of their oblations, and I am not kidding when I say there were probably 1,000 oblates in attendance. It was the biggest I've ever seen in my entire life, and so motivating and exciting. And they study for 6 years, sometimes longer. And when they have their oblation, they get a new name and they wear a black cassock from then on. Their old selves are covered by their new self. And it's very exciting, and they take it very seriously, and they're beautiful. And we had 2 of those people on our team. Next is the rehabilitative, and that was actually created by Sister Kathy Huber, who actually partnered or companioned Alice at the Ohio Reformatory for Women. And she is actually part of our community, and Alice is serving 150 years to life. So it was a beautiful experience for Alice, who is still very vibrantly engaged in her oblation. And so that was really an eye-opener for a lot of oblates in Rome, and they all wanted to learn more. And I was excited to share, I could share a little bit because I knew Alice and Sister Kathy. Next is the virtual model, which absolutely speaks for itself as well. That model came from an Episcopalian priest / oblate from Wales. And he is in technologies in his profession as well as in his priesthood. So these are the different models and where they came from. But I want to share with you just for a second the template, because you're going to do an activity with these in just a moment. So Stephanie's holding that. Stephanie, can you come over here, please, so I can see? The one that she's right here is catechetical. And I don't know that we even talked about that. Catechetical, I've skipped that one. I apologize. Catechetical. Stephanie.
I'm sorry. Okay.
The catechetical model actually came from Germany. And the catechetical model is when you use a book study. A book study. I know they can't read this, but we sent out the files, and I hope that our Zoom participants can pull them up and look at them. I want to share with you kind of what's on each of these models, because they follow a template that Janice and I created. The model description, what is it? How is this formation model experienced? What are the inquirers or candidates supposed to be doing? What is the novice expected to do during the process, and how do they do it? And then how long should a novice expect to be experiencing formation using this model? So they give them an idea. Is it 6 years? Is it 1 year? Or how long is it exactly? And then who facilitates the model? And it was different all over the world. I have to tell you, sometimes it was a priest, sometimes it was a sister, sometimes it was an oblate director, sometimes it was a team of people. So it's very interesting to us. Then what does the ongoing formation include for continued formation? And this was really important to us as part of the template, because sometimes I think we get the idea that once we've had our oblation, we're a done deal and we're just getting started. So we wanted to promote, what does it look like to be an intentional oblate? What does that look like? What's our investment in our oblation, our calling, our vocation? So we're going to do an activity right now, but to do that, we can turn up to the next slide, please, Sister Jill. We're going to, in the Zoom participants, they're going to be breaking out into groups of 3 again, and they're going to go to their chat rooms and identify 1 or 2 elements from any of the 7 models that they find interesting and may want to explore as part of their ongoing formation. And then take a look at, you can take your sheet with you. Which pillar do you think that might fall under the activity that you just previously did? All right. So we can excuse the Zoom group. So you're going to be looking at elements of the 7 models, something interesting. Which pillar does it fall under? We're really doing the Reader's Digest version. This was a 90-minute class. And so we know that we're not giving you a whole lot of time, but we really just wanted to maybe create an appetite for ways that we can do our ongoing formation. All right, so if I could have your attention, please. I think we're gonna ask if anyone would like to share a thought or an idea that came to them about the 4 pillars or about the 7 models of formation, anything. You'll have to come up here, so we can hear you.
Or here, you can come over here.
Oh, come over there.
Yeah,
Thank
you have your
you.
own microphone and
Sure,
everything.
you can go right over there. Sure, you can go to there. Thank you. Thank you.
Right, is she in front of the camera if we do this?
I don't have.
Okay, right there.
Do I have to? I can just talk. Wait a minute, is this on? Yeah, it's on. I was just excited when we were looking at the model that was the interactive model, which is what we use here. We spent a lot of time there talking. Sorry, Mary Lee, I'm gonna go wrestle. They do a retreat for the Oblates who are studying before they're installed or finished, and that's a neat idea. And the idea of chapter groups, which would be in your local communities, that's a really neat idea. And when you talk about evangelizing and outreach, I mean, I think that would be just something. It's a very neat idea. We discussed that. And then the recollection, having the retreats on site after the oblation, but then also doing these days of recollection, which I know the sisters do that. And so that, that was really interesting. And then we all decided that the 6-year program in Korea is pretty intense.
Thank you. Yes, it is pretty intense. It is pretty intense. Another thing that the interactive model of formation does is they have once a year what's called study days, where they work on that intellectual pillar. And they have a particular topic, and they have different monastic speakers come in and talk about that topic, and then times of reflection about that topic. So yeah, that's thank you. That's awesome. Who else would like to share something that stood out to them or that they thought, that's kind of interesting? Might be a good discussion down the road. Anybody? Should we call out to our Zoom participants? Not get anything? Okay, we have our Oblate Director is going to share a little something here. Thank you.
Well, one of the things that struck me most when Shirley first introduced these models to us, when I was looking at the rehabilitative model, one of the things that we kept hearing, and you'll see it in a minute in the presentation, everyone talked about how important the connection with their monastery was and being around their sisters or their brothers. And then I looked at that rehabilitative model and I thought, all right, now here you have people who won't ever have that connection except maybe with one sister or one brother. They may never be able to set foot on the grounds of their monastery. So how do you keep that formation going and build that relationship when the relationship itself prevents the person from doing that? So the pieces that were incorporated to try and work around that, I thought were really interesting. And it was something I hadn't really thought about. How connected could I stay to people if I never saw them,
That's a great comment. Maybe Sister Kathy. Maybe Sister Kathy, who is the companion in the journey. You can come over here, Sister Kathy, if you want.
All right, we can do it together.
You're close.
Oblate Alice, I met through Shirley. I mentored Shirley when she became an oblate, and she would say to me, there's this woman at the prison who's always asking, what are you learning now? What are you learning now? And after about the 4th time, I said, will you tell Alice if she wants to be an oblate and gets the permissions, I would be honored to mentor her. It was quite a journey. At that time, I was not a visitor, but a volunteer, which meant I did not see her face to face. So we had to do all this in writing. I have a book about that thick of Alice's answers to the Oblate study program, Wisdom Distilled from the Daily. Now, Shirley is very involved in this prison, and several times she and others have done this study called, Joan Chittister's book called Monasteries of the Heart. And they do this in the prison. Shirley, tell them about that.
Well, to your point, Stephanie, it's the only way we can really stay connected. And women who are not really understanding about oblates were still very, very engaged about how to grow relationship with Christ through the use of monasteries of the heart that Sister Joan Chittister wrote. So, that's the only ways, to Stephanie's point, that we can keep them engaged, because right after Alice became an oblate, they shut the program down. They're not allowed to have any more oblates. They said it was too much work for the officers, and I'm not sure I understand that, but that's the rule. So Alice has decided to use her oblation and mentors women in growing their life in Christ and teaches them about the rule of Saint Benedict, which I just love. So it's pretty awesome what began and continues, right? Doing the best we can. Thank you, sister. Thank you.
Karen on Zoom said that she sends birthday cards, Christmas cards, and cards to Alice in the prison, and she thinks that's the way we could keep connected with her.
Oh, wow. That's true. We can use communication. Absolutely.
And what the prison will do is photocopy anything you mail. Because, we can put drugs in those colored cards. And now no longer does it go directly to the prison, but it goes to someplace else to be processed, so it takes a long time. But she can receive, she'll periodically say, I would like to have this book. Another thing that we have here is, we have a program called Women of the Rule, and we can write grants, and the Women of the Rule choose them. And every year I write one for ministry to the incarcerated. And so all kind of good things happen. We also go to Madison, Indiana.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Kathy. All right, I think we'll move on. Okay, so we can turn to the next slide, please. And I think I'm gonna ask our Oblate Director to come up and do this next portion.
So the next thing that we want to talk about here in our presentation is you have seen what the activity was, and you've seen what the 3 topics for the Congress workshops were. So the question is, where did those come from? Well, those came from the comments that we got from the people who attended the 4th Congress. So those who participated in the 4th Congress were asked to do a survey at the end of that Congress and to really give direction for what they thought they should be seeing at the 5th Congress, when we had the 5th Congress, which, by the way, was 6 years in the making. Thank you, COVID. It was very frustrating. But anyway, so if we could go to the next slide, we're going to talk about what happened. So we were told these are the 3 things we want to talk about: oblate formation, connection with our monasteries, evangelizing to younger people. And that developed our workshop objectives and our overview. And then from that point, we had to consider the language groups, the facilitators, all those things. So the majority of the Congress participants were English speaking, and English was the official language. So when the facilitators gave their sessions, each of the English facilitators did 2 workshops. So while workshop 1 was going on, you were either in workshop 1 or you went to what's called Islands of Silence. And then you would switch off. So everybody did the 3 workshops, and they did 3 Islands of Silence. And Islands of Silence was talks on contemplative prayer, I think Lectio Divina. There was a talk about Thomas Merton, that type of thing. So there was something going on the entire afternoon that kept you occupied. So we're going to take a walk through what the respondents told us they thought about what they got. So if we could, oh, thank you so much. You're so good, sister. We're tracking now. We had 69 completed responses. Now, some people maybe skipped a question. Some people gave multiple answers, but we did get a good return. As I said, they were bribed. You got a gift at the end of each session when you turned in your evaluation. It might have been a candy bar. In one case, it was this book, Laudato Si Reflections. This was created by the Oblates at St. Meinrad. And so everyone got one of these. And Janice and Shirley and Father Jeremy and I took 250 of those puppies in our luggage to Italy. We did not bring back the leftovers. So if you want some leftovers, you can get them from San Anselmo. There were 5 English groups, as Shirley said earlier, and then you can see who the facilitators were. Janice Dopp and Father Jeremy facilitated one group. Shirley did one, I did one. Judith Valente, who's been here several times in the past, she's a pretty well-known author, does a lot of Benedictine writing and a lot of work on Thomas Merton, also facilitated another group. And then we had the 4 facilitators in the other languages. So if we can move on to the first evaluation summary, this is for the workshop that you just did some samples of, the Exploring Oblate Formation Needs for the Future. So when people were asked, what did you find most valuable about this workshop? The biggest things that come up, and you're going to see this come up a lot, discussion with the other oblates. If it isn't number 1, it's number 2 in almost every survey we gave them, being able to talk with other oblates from other communities. And then the number 2 response was the 4 pillars of formation, the human, communal, spiritual, intellectual. Oh, yes, I got all 4 of them. And the 7 models that you just looked at. The other thing I want to let you know, if you want to look at those more in depth, they are online. When one of the things Shirley mentioned Father Sam, the priest, the English Episcopalian priest from Wales, who is a tech god. He's just a priest in everyday life, but when it comes to technology, it's a whole different level. Sam did the technology, and so everyone got their name tag when they registered. And at the bottom of their name tag is the website for us to go and find all of the models that are on there. So I will send out to you the website, and you can go on there and click on, and you'll see a file that says English. You want to hit the English file that have English, Deutsch, Italiano, some others. Click the English, and all of those models come up. So if you want to look at those in your spare time, or you want to print them out, they are available. So the models were very important, the pillars of formation. And then the next slide, we asked them, what is the first thing you're going to share with your monastery? One of the things that was emphasized in every discussion, you did these questions coming in, you filled them out in your workshop. We want you to be filling out what we talked about in these workshops. And then we want you to talk about or make a list of what will I take back to my monastery. So they were all asked to go back. You had pre-work, but there's post-work. You don't just get to leave the Congress and it's all over with. You go back, you share with your monasteries. And I'm in the process of writing to the American monasteries and asking them to send us their summaries, because we've already heard from some of them that they've prepared reports similar to what we're giving you and talked with their monasteries. So for the most part, the same thing, the 4 pillars of formation, the 7 models of formation, and then other topics related to formation. Those are the top 3 answers. People were just, I think we hit the nail on the head that formation is what people wanted to talk about. So that's good, because it would have been a really rough week otherwise. Go to the next slide, please. Then the second workshop was living out our oblate calling in the 21st century. And in this one, again, the thing that people found most important for that particular workshop, or most valuable to them, were the group exercises. You had a few minutes. A lot of the 90 minutes we spent with them, they were talking to each other. It wasn't lecture. We were facilitators, moderators. We were not lecturing. They were talking to each other. We were just giving them questions and making notes on their answers. And then also the next 2 hot topics. One, generally evangelizing to young people. How are we going to bring younger people in? How do we attract younger people? And there were some really great suggestions and things that other monasteries are doing in other places that are trying to reach out to youth. And so we have all of those on Post-it notes that we made copies of. And so we have all of that as we move forward and work on future congresses and make suggestions to our own monasteries as we go through time on how we can bring younger people into Benedictinism. And then living out our calling, what was the next one would be, what are you going to take back to your monastery? What do you want to talk to your monastery about? This one, not quite as clear cut. one of the things that was most important was to talk about the liturgy of the evangelization to youth. So that was really big. Beyond that, it kind of split along a lot of different lines about the models, the importance of social events. But the overall theme, even though they're just an answer here, an answer there, it's connection with people. It's connection with other oblates, it's connection with their communities, it's connection with the outside world. So apparently people don't hate each other as much as you would think from listening to the news. So if we could go to the next slide, we talked about expanding the mission of our monasteries. I mean, that is one of the big things that we commit to as an oblate. And so the thing that people said was the most valuable to them in that arena was the discussion groups, talking about how various monasteries do that. What is their connection with their monastery? When are they there? What kinds of things do they do? How often are they around the sisters or the brothers or whatever it may be? So that was a really big topic. And it was very, very clear that that connection with the monasteries was huge. That is the thing that brings people, that is the thing that keeps people committed and interested. And as far as what they would take back on the next slide, you will see that they find, again, a couple of different things that they want to take back. They want to talk about how we can look at the work we do at our monastery as an expansion of our own charism. How are we helping our monasteries and volunteering? What are we doing with our formation? What kind of ideas are we generating? What are we contributing? What are we contributing to our monasteries? And we spent time talking about, at least in my group, is, well, how do we know? How do we know what we have to do? And the obvious answer is, well, let's ask. Let's talk with our sisters or brothers or priests, whatever, monks, whatever it is. Let's talk with them. What would be most useful for us to do for you? How can we help you? So we need to have good lines of communication. Then we did an overall survey. Now, the overall survey you will really like, because, sister, if you would move that slide forward, yes. This one, you didn't get your prize until the closing dinner. And when you came to the closing dinner, you had to bring your overall prize, and you got this amazing gift. I'm going to let Shirley tell you about the gift. I'm just going to tell you it's an amazing gift. And people were very excited and following us around for the next day, trying to see if they could get more copies of it, which says something, I think. So one of the things that they were asked is, how would you rate this Congress on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the top number? 92% gave us somewhere between an 8 and a 10. That's not really a lot to complain about. So we were pretty excited that we felt like we had really accomplished it. There were only a few people who were dissatisfied and ranked it even under a 5. And in all honesty, we probably spent more time on those evaluations than on the other 92%, because you always look at the ones who were dissatisfied because, of course, oh my gosh, it was terrible. But to be honest with you, I think that in those cases, they were people who really weren't given a clear understanding of what the Congress was. I don't think they realized they were coming to a working Congress. I think they were expecting a retreat. And so this was not what their expectation was. But obviously those who were participating were overall very pleased. And so then we were very pleased because the abbot primate was very pleased. And we also went further and asked them on the next page in the Congress survey, we asked them, which portion of the Congress was most valuable to you? Did you think was most helpful in moving our charism forward? And what do you want to share when you get home? Well, far and away, the two top things were the speaker presentations. There were 3 of those. Those are also online, and I will also let you get you the link for those. They were very, very good. 2 of them were in English. One was given by Abbot Donato, who is the abbot of Monte Cassino. Right? Well, but he was the abbot of Monte Cassino at the time. And Abbot Primate Gregory. And the 3rd one was from Sister Madeleine Marie Cassot from France. Hers was probably the most intellectually challenging of the 3. And because it was intellectually challenging, and because it was in French, and because the translators were a little challenged with some of the translation, it was a little rough going. So everybody asked right away, can we get that in English? So we do have her talk as well. It was fabulous. So we will get you the links to all three of those in case you want to review them. The other things that were given very high marks were the liturgy itself. And I think it might have been a little bit higher than this normally, but it was all in Latin. And so some of the younger folks found that a little bit challenging. Those of us who were used to the Mass in Latin didn't so much blink an eye at it, but also the prayers were all in Latin. So the Liturgy of the Hours is a little bit of a challenge, even if you had Latin when you were a kid. But the liturgy overall, the liturgies were beautiful and people really enjoyed them. They enjoyed the field trips. 59% said that that was very important, and 55% liked the talks on silence. And I think the only disappointment there was they anticipated a little more time for actual contemplation, and it wasn't. It was really kind of a working session. So there were a lot of other comments, but again, being around the other oblates, the faith sharing, the papal audience was impressive. The conviviality and just being at San Anselmo. And we have some pictures we're going to share with you in just a second, so you can kind of get a feel for what the atmosphere was like. Could move to the next slide, please. We asked people, how strongly did you feel that the field trips to Monte Cassino and Subiaco helped or brought you closer to Christ? They are really inspiring and amazing places to be. Maybe a little more inspiring if it's not during a really bad heat wave when you have to climb a lot of steps. So people were coming back pretty wiped out at the end of those days. But even at that, 73% felt it was really important and really impactful. And another 20% said they somewhat agreed. So you really can't complain about that kind of a result, especially when the weather was less than cooperative. And there was a couple there. The husband was the delegate from his monastery, and they brought their adult daughter who is severely disabled and was in a wheelchair. And they went everywhere. They went everywhere with her. He found a way to get her up every hill, and she was just kind of the darling of the Congress. In fact, her birthday was the last day we were there, and so the chef at San Anselmo brought out this huge birthday cake with the Benedictine logo in the center, and then happy birthday for her on it. So it was really, really great. And once she met you, she remembered your name. So as soon as you walked past, hi, Stephanie, Shirley, how are you? She was just a doll. So concluding the Congress summary, the last summary page, which would be the next slide, gets into where are we going to go? Because again, we also asked them not only, what did you think about this one? As in, did we hit our target of what we were shooting for? Where should we go with the next Congress? So Sister Jill, if you could move that slide forward. We asked them to talk to us about what should be our focus for 2017. Where should we be going? And we've got those answers, but the most powerful thing that came out of that was people kept coming back to the talk that Abbot Donato gave. And he asked the question, are you the Benedict the world is waiting for? As we're living as oblates now, and we move forward, are you the next Saint Benedict? Janice really took that to heart. And Janice, most of you know, Janice died a few weeks after we came back from Congress. She'd been fighting cancer for a long time. And the Congress was a challenge for her, but her husband Jack came along and wheeled her everywhere. And she worked those hours and had a fabulous time and did just an amazing job. But she came back and got COVID, and then she kind of recovered from that. And then she had another chemo treatment and she passed. So that was tough. But she really took that comment to heart. And she said to us, people are kind of talking about that. Maybe that's our next theme. So the questions that we have moving forward are to think about. We have a preliminary okay from Father Benoit, who's the Benedictine priest at San Anselmo that oversaw the Congress planning. He's from St. Vincent in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. And he sort of said, well, okay, preliminarily, it's not totally up to him because we'll have a new abbot primate in September who will approve the next Congress. But our questions are, what does that really mean? Let's think about what does it mean to be the next Benedict? What is the world waiting for? What do we need? We need a lot, but what are the most urgent needs? And what are you willing to do? You as a person, you as a group, you as a community, what are you willing to do to get that done? And Janice suggested having Brother John Mark Falkenheim from St. Meinrad as a keynote speaker for that. So those are all kinds of things that are sort of hanging out there as we start looking preliminarily. These slides and some more down in the weeds kind of ones have already been presented to Father Benoit so that he can go to the abbot primate and say, here were the results. This is what we have. So we're encouraged. We really enjoyed it. We're waiting to get the summaries back from the other participants to see what they shared with their communities. Did you really share the things you said you were going to share? And what feedback did you get? So now we've shared it with you, and at some point we'll want to get some feedback from you as well. Probably not today. We don't have time. But when there's an opportunity for homework, Shirley will not let it go. So rest assured,
Dog on a bone.
rest assured that at some point we're going to be coming back. We're going to be talking more about this. And I'm going to turn it over at this point and let Shirley show you some of the fun things that went on.
Thank you, everything. One of the things that was so exciting about Congress was that we had an actual commissioning by the abbot primate. And we came up one at a time, and he blessed us and he gave us this commissioning note. It was designed by Brother Martin again. And it says, may God, who has begun a good work in you, bring it to fulfillment. 5th International Congress of Benedictine Oblates, September 2023. So this was really powerful, and we got a blessing. And then the other thing that we got was what Stephanie was talking about. Everybody got one of these. And these were actually handmade polymer clay by the women of Ohio Reformatory in Marysville, Ohio. And that's where I volunteer. That's where Oblate Alice is. Alice was leading the team that makes pieces like this that are sold, and the monies go to a nonprofit to invest in those incarcerated people who are getting out so they won't re-offend. So we played around with what could this look like? How big should it be? I went in there and they made prototypes. I think I even gave Sister Anita Louise a prototype a long time ago and said, hey, this is what we're thinking. What do you think? And I even took a picture of her with it. So, so the inside of this little bowl has either St. Benedict or it has the medal of the Benedictine medal. On the outside, it says Oblate World Congress 2023. And then it says Kindway, the name of the nonprofit that the ladies make these for. And just to explain how they make these, they had to set it on a bowl and hand make it because they didn't have anything exactly the size. And then they used a silk screen on the inside, which one of the volunteers offered to buy for them, 2 of them. And then they had to color them, and then they baked them in a toaster oven. So each one of these was baked in a toaster oven, all right? These are the tools that they're allowed to have in the prison. And along with this came this little card that says Kindway, a nonprofit organization that invests in the lives impacted by incarceration. Each handmade one-of-a-kind polymer clay bowl has been crafted by incarcerated women at the Ohio Reformatory in Marysville, Ohio, USA. This artisan team leader is a Benedictine oblate named Alice, who is serving a life sentence. Everybody wanted to buy these from us, and they were following us around. And you know what? We have one for every one of you today. And so we wanted you to have one as your commemorative piece of the Congress as well. So should I go on with the next slide, or you want to do this? Okay, next slide, please. So how are we going to move forward to live the wisdom of the rule? I mean, that's the question for us. One of the things I think I spoke about earlier is how can we live an intentional oblation? It's not that we just say we're an oblate. What does that mean? And what are we going to do with that? So be intentional around it means how are we going to move forward? And that's going to cause us to maybe change a little bit. Our formation will help us change a little bit. One of the ways that Stephanie and I and Lynn had talked about was how do we move forward as an Oblate community? We can't decide what that is. We have to all decide what that is together. So we created, and are they on their table? Okay, if you would look at the handout on your table. And what this is, it says, in order for us to move forward to live the wisdom of the rule, we ask for your prayerful feedback. Your responses will provide us insight and direction for planning for the next 3 years. Please circle the ideas that you believe will promote formation and engage us to live an intentional oblation and expand the mission of the monastery, our monastery that we serve. Submit your selections at the February 18th meeting, or you can submit them electronically by that date. There's lots of ideas on here, lots of different things. So please circle the ones that you prayerfully think will help us move forward to live the wisdom of the rule. But we also know everything in the world is not on this piece of paper. So at the very bottom, it says other. You may have just a super idea that has nothing to do with anything on this page, and we want your ideas too. So what'll happen when you turn this in February, we will go back with, there'll be Lynn and Stephanie and Sister Betty and the team, and we'll look at the things that were most often circled, and we'll take a look at how we could move forward to do some of these things that you all have decided are the right thing for our community. Does that make sense? Are you willing to help us figure this out? We don't know what we don't know yet. And we look forward to you helping us figure that out. So thank you. So one of the things we talked about is that how can we become more engaged with the content before we have a topic at our next meeting? You know, how can we get our heads around what we're going to be discussing and learning about? And our next topic will be presented by Sister Jill, our wonderful technology person in the back room. And it's going to be about vocation. So we thought maybe go forward when we know what the topics are, we could help us think about it before we even get here. And what does that mean to us as oblates? So there's a little paragraph up there that talks about vocation, and then a reflection we'd like you to do before you come next February. Think about how God personally called you to be a Benedictine oblate at Monastery Immaculate Conception. And our new people, even Lisa, might think about, what drew me to think about this in the first place, which is awesome. When and how were you first drawn to learn about what it means to be an oblate? What were the circumstances leading up to you becoming an inquirer, a novice, or making your final oblation? Journal or share your story with someone about how God called you to your oblate vocation. And if we can think about, if some of us were in Mass this morning and Father Jeremy's homily talked about how important stories are. And when we share stories, it becomes very meaningful to us, and we take on the stories, we feel the stories. And so whenever we can share our story of our calling, it can be very impactful to people that maybe don't even know what an oblate is, don't even know about Monastery Immaculate Conception. We're going to help them. We're going to help them learn that. So I just want to say thank you so much. You've been so gracious. You've been so gracious.